All right. Come on. All right. Let me share my screen right to you guys. You guys still there? Hello?
Yes. Okay.
I'm looking for something. I can't even find this. Where's it at? This thing is definitely tripping. All right. All right. Cool. Let's just start right here. All right. The name of our Torah portion, what is it? Who's been doing their homework?
It's Shemot.
That's right. So we're not going with this. It's not Exodus. We're off of that. That's Christian. Okay. We're not talking about no Exodus. Okay. Because it wasn't, well, they said it was an exit, but what we're talking about is why could this thing change? What is going on tonight? Oh, because I was doing something earlier. Yeah. It's Shemoth. Okay. So we understand the first part of that is what? What's that name?
Name?
Yeah, that's name. Okay. My Hebrew people, what's the oath?
Plural.
Yes. And it means names. Okay. We know the first part of this shin and the mem has to do with someone's character. Okay. So again, we know that. So and it talks about the names. Okay. So within this in particular Torah portion, what we need to understand is that we're going to be talking about some different characters. Okay. They open us up with giving us a list of the names of the sons of Yaakov, and they list them there and they tell us who they are. When you read the first couple of verses there, just go to verse number 9. Okay, go to verse number 7. We look at verse number 7, and it says that the descendants of Israel were fruitful, they increased abundantly, and they multiplied, and they grew very powerful. And the land became filled with them. And it's talking about the generation that came there, and they just started growing, just like the Most High said that they would. What do you guys see in terms of, because I want you to start looking for things a little bit deeper. So what do you see in this this table right here? From right here, verse 5 all the way up. What do you see besides the names? What's different about these names? Do you see anything that sticks out to you?
They're in a certain order.
Yes, they are. How do you think it begins? Great observation.
I was about to say lineage.
Yes, good. So what we understand, okay, because we're Torah teachers, right? Because you guys, we're all students, but we're still going to be teachers one day because we're going to teach people. So what we need to understand is when we look at this, right, what you see is you see that lineage, but you see that order, okay? The order is he mentions the sons of Leah first, okay? And then he talks about Raquel, her son, and then it gives the name of the names of the slave girls. So it's always going to be that order. Now it's a reason why. Okay, number one is out of respect for who the first wife is. Okay, so regardless to who was loved the most, that was a great observation. You saw that it's in that order. Okay, so the first 6 here are Leah's sons. Okay, and then you have Rachel's son right here, and then of course here's Rachel's slave girl, and then these are Leah's slave girl, right? Which is, I think, Zilpah. Yeah. So, and the reason for this too is that Rachel's slave girl had Dan and Naphtali before these guys were born. Okay. So these guys right here were born. A quick way that I remember that they're connected from Bilhah is because when you look at Don's name as a D and then you look at the N, which is Naphtali. And of course, that is the letters for Don's name, Dan or Don, meaning to judge. That's a quick way for you to remember that. And so that's a great observation that you had there, right? That's a good thing that you saw there. Also, too, what we see here is that Yah has kept his promise in verse number 7. He said, that when I bring you there, I'm going to make you very powerful. And so when we look at the landscape of what's going on, everyone, the children of Israel had been here for quite some time. Okay. So Joseph had died, the brothers have died, the father had been dead, but now they're starting to grow and they're starting to develop. So now we're going to get into the formation of how the nation came to be, but also too, we're going to look at the political. There's a political piece to this that often we don't pick up because, before we were religious. And so we've just thought of everything as being spiritual, but this really has to do with the political landscape and the development of a people that was causing a great deal of problems and a great deal of fear for the country, which is in this case, Mizraim. So they said a new king had, arose up in Mizraim. So we know that, the identification or the actual title of Pharaoh is a king. And it said that, let me see here. There was something I wanted to tell you about this. Oh, when Yosef, I just want to ask you a question. When Yosef was in Pharaoh's house, what was he doing besides, gathering the grain and all that? Because this is a continuation. This is not a different book. This is actually another part of the scroll, right? So it's not a new book. It means and something happened. So it's not a new book. Like we like to divide it, Genesis, Exodus. It's not a new book. It actually begins with the words and, okay? So it's a continuation of where we just left off of. What was Joseph doing in the land of Egypt?
He was running it.
Yeah, he was running it, and he was also, I want to let you know, he was a counsel. And he was what they would call, remember he said the spirit of the living God is inside of you. So he was full of wisdom, he was very wise, and he was giving counsel, okay? This is a very important piece that I was able to pick up that I want to share with you, because it's going to show you what happens when you give somebody knowledge and when you give them understanding. So when this new king rose up in verse number 9, he said to his people, he said, look, the descendants of Israel have become a people too numerous for us, or okay, too numerous and powerful for us. Now, come, let's use, why am I trying to read more than into it? Let's use wisdom in dealing with them. Otherwise, they'll continue to multiply. And in the event of war, they might ally themselves with our enemies and fight against us and leave the land altogether. So the concern is that they're afraid that if the matter of population and growth, that we would actually turn on them. And what they're going to use, okay, is this wisdom. Okay. And you would think that they're using the wisdom that they've always had. No, the wisdom that they had was given from Joseph. When he was in the land, he was the one that was full of wisdom. He was the one who was consulting all their wise. Remember what Pharaoh says, there's no one in all Egypt that's as wise as Yosef. Yosef is the one who is wise. So now they're talking about using kokma, okay? And kokma in Hebrew is called wisdom, okay? Which consists of this contracted word here called kok and ma, okay? Do you remember what the word ma means?
Is it
It's
what?
yeah. Yes, it's what. So in Hebrew, they don't use punctuation marks. They don't use question marks and that kind of thing. They use words. So it's like what or what is it? Okay. What is it or what? That's what ma means. And Coke means power. So basically, wisdom from an agricultural perspective means the power of a question or the power to ask a question or the power of what? To have the power to ask. Okay, so a person who has wisdom is the person who asks questions. That's the person who's wise. Okay, the breakdown of wisdom from a agricultural perspective has to do with cheese. I don't know if I taught this to you before. It has to do with cheese. Okay, and what they would do is they take goat milk, right, and they put it in a skin bag. Okay, and they would shake it up, and then after they shake it up, they hang it up onto a tent pole, and they let it hang there, and they let it hang out in the sun. And when the sun heat hits it, the heat of the sun will cause there to be a division between the water and the whey, so it starts curdling up when the heat, and they go back and shake it up again. And so what it is a process of making cheese. And what you can understand from that is that they have to go through certain steps in order to come to the final result. But in the final result, they are seeing what they would call a division between things. And so wisdom is literally knowing or making a division between something to know what something is and to separate. That's what they're talking about. Well, let us use wisdom in dealing with them, okay? Because we can't treat them like we treat everybody else, okay? Now we have to deal with them differently. So the process of wisdom is this idea of making a division so you and I can separate things and we can literally see what it is. And so this is why they came together, because they understood that there was a potential problem. Okay, now why did they think that there was someone going to come against them? Only thing we can think about or even imply is that we understand the Most High is the cause of this, because it says in Psalms that he's caused these people to hate his people. Okay, so but what about this war? Why were they worried about a war?
They were worried that the numbers would be too great, and like slavery, we would wake up and rebel.
Yeah, and that's a real what? That's a real threat, right? That's a real threat. And so they felt threatened, and they felt threatened by the numbers. Okay, because as you know, the numbers, what? They don't what? Somebody tell me, you know this, you're it. Numbers don't
lie.
they don't lie. The numbers is what you call the truth of the situation. Okay, the numbers are the truth, and that's why the Most High is saying that I'm going to increase your numbers. Okay, so our numbers are a problem. So just based on what we know about the Most High, said that you guys are become very powerful, you guys are going to have a lot of family and all this. He understood. Now can we see his connection? It was what he promised about the descendants of becoming very powerful. Why is this thing doing this? Becoming very powerful, that he knew that this will be a problem. He knew that the numbers will be a problem. When the Most High sent us into exile, what did he say he's going to do to our numbers?
Increasing.
When you go into exile, I'm going to chop you down. You're going to be left few in numbers. Okay, so if this is the idea behind it, are you and I a threat to anybody right now? No, not really.
No.
You're not real threat. They got some things about us that they make them raise their eyebrows or their ears. But the fact of the matter is numbers are very, very powerful. Okay. So listen when they go ahead.
The reason why we're not a threat is because they purposely, they like they did in Egypt, they were killing the firstborn and or the males, right? They do that here too. They've done that through eugenics, and they've done it through the police and everything that they've done. They've tried to keep our population down. That's always been the mode of operation.
Yeah, that's the modus operandi, right? So you just touched on it, Rivka. Thank you so much for that, because that's where I was going. Like, what have they done? What have they done to make us? So let's name just a few things. This just tells about the few things that have been cutting. So she mentioned, you have the abortion piece. What else you got?
The incarceration piece.
Oh boy, thank you.
Families.
Medication.
How do you spell incarceration? Forget it. You know what I mean. Chill. Prison. Would you say? Oh, did you just say medicine?
Yeah,
The
medication.
food,
Medication is a big one, boy.
the food,
Mental.
Wow, food, mental, yes. What else?
The injection, the jab.
The jab. There you go, Okoti. What else?
The idea of condoms.
Ooh, there you go. Yeah, because we want you to be free willy. You can do whatever you want. You're unfettered, but make sure you don't create. Okay, so we got abortion, we got the incarceration, the prison, we got the medications for sure. We got the food, that's for sure. It's also
Guns.
too,
the guns,
huh?
guns,
You got guns.
media.
Okay, what else?
Section 8, when split up the family.
The
Oh yeah,
media.
wait a minute. Don't forget the big one, divorce.
Oh yeah.
Let's get that out the house.
I would say homosexuality is a big one.
So thank you.
And the
Thank
media, the movies, the
Oh
idea
yeah.
of who we are.
We'll get entertainment and we'll get your brain.
Other birth control, like pills,
Yeah.
the shots, tubal
We're gonna
ligation.
do a BC on you. We got the birth control piece.
Women's liberation.
All right. Got the women's lib. We're gonna tear up the family. Okay. What else we got? Don't you forget the big one. Religion. Religion has tore us up. Okay.
Method of control.
Yeah, that's a mind control. Okay. We got some pretty,
Sports.
yeah, okay. You got that entertainment. There you go. And through music and ideas. What else we talking about? How else have they been cutting our numbers down? Okay, so a lot of this stuff like the food and everything leads to what we would call, and the medicines lead to disease, which that's part of it. And then also too, the medical care that we do get, so not only the medicines, but the medical care that we get has affected our numbers, because they were, at one point, weren't they sterilizing our people?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they were doing all kind of tests on us, weren't they?
Yes.
Okay. So we see all these things. These are big things. Now, when you look at everything that we have here, just a few things that we have on here, and there's probably more that we haven't written up here. All these things affect the individual, right? But also too, the goal is to destroy what?
The family.
I'm going to destroy the family. Be more specific though, more specific.
The men.
I'm going to destroy the seed. I don't want you to forget that. I don't want you to forget that we're going to destroy the seed. Remember, in the last few weeks, we've been talking about this, because the seed is what? Life.
Life.
All right. So I want us to start thinking, and just let's all stay on the agricultural piece, because then it'll make more sense to us. Okay. So they're trying to get rid of the seed. The reason why you and I are not really doing really well here is not because only the people were around, but it's also to the soil that we're in. Reese, Yah keeps telling you, I'm gonna return you to your own soil, because that's where you'll thrive. You're not going to thrive in a ground or a seed. Certain seeds supposed to go in certain land. It does well. You know how they have certain trees in certain environments or different parts of the world, and then other trees won't do well in that area. That's the same with people. But we don't see it like that. You see, so they're trying to destroy the seed, and that was their goal. So we need to cut down their numbers. And that's what their intention is to cut down the numbers because they pose a threat. So what they did, everyone, is they went ahead and they put slave masters over them. Okay. So I want to take a look right quick at some of these words because they're important in the Hebrew, because I want to give you a little bit more understanding. Okay. So we know what their names are. We've been over the names. Now we're going to look at what this is. Okay, so they put upon them these taskmasters right here. Put these guys over them. And I was trying to figure out, there was one word that I wanted to give to you. Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. So this word here, which is called mas, okay, it means literally someone to put some forced labor on you, right? I want you to understand when they talk about taskmasters, I want us to really understand what we're really talking about, okay? What they're really talking about is, how many things do you think they were going to have to do? Let's talk about the different things that you think the children of Israel were going to, the tasks that they were over. Let's just talk about a few of them. What did it tell us what they were going to do from what you read so far?
Build.
All right. So now they're building. So they're into construction. Okay. They're building. Okay. Which is really hard labor. Okay. What else?
Farming.
They were into farming. So they were in doing things out in the field. Okay. When they were already there, they were in charge of all the what? Remember, they came out of Canaan and told Pharaoh that our family is what? This is what we do.
Sheep.
Yes, we're shepherds. Okay, so we do a lot of shepherding. So we're in charge of all the cattle. So we're not just in terms of the field, but we're also in charge of the cattle and the herds and the flocks and the sheep and all that kind of stuff. What else? Think about the Nile River. They were what you would call the people, huh?
Fishing.
Yeah, they absolutely. They were doing some of the fishing as well. They were actually the ones who were going to get the water, because remember, the Most High said, when I bring you out, when you put somebody into servitude for you, they'll be the one who will go and gather your, they will gather water, and they would also to gather wood. So they were water gatherers, and they were dealing with wood as well for supplies. Okay. Also too, they were servants in Pharaoh's house, okay, in his household. So that changed. What else? What else you guys can think about that they were in charge of? Now, remember, this is not just a city. This is literally like a nation. So this wasn't just in, one part of Egypt. We're talking about the whole entire land, right? So he had to put out a decree and say what it was going to be. So when he dealt with his people, they came out with this law, okay, to make sure that these people, the Hebrew people, number one, that they couldn't stand, they thought they were detestable, and secondly, they were an abhorrent to them. They didn't even sit around and eat with them. Basically what I'm saying to you is, all also too, we learned from the Torah portion that they had women that were what? What were the two women?
Um,
The midwife.
They were midwives. And do you remember what they said? They said that there's a difference between the Egyptian women and the Hebrew women. So you know from that context that they were doing midwife work for both the Hebrews and the Egyptians. So you can see again, so they may have been, remember they asked, do you want me to go get a Hebrew woman to go nurse your child when you talk about Moshe? So they were not only that, but they were also midwives, and they were, I don't know what the proper term is, but they were nursing other women's babies. Okay. This sounds very familiar, doesn't it? Damn.
yes.
Damn, this, excuse me, this is, you know, they were nursing, and they were taking care of, they were nannies, they were taking care of those people, okay, in every respect. So what I put all this up here because I want you to understand that literally everything that needed to be done, okay, they were doing it. Israel was doing everything, okay. The Most High says something in chapter number 81 of Psalms, which we're going to read in a moment, that he talks about what he did for Israel. And this is something that, you know, would probably resonate with us. But when you think about it and you look at the list, the little list that we have right here, what do you see? Do you see anything familiar? They were not just building supply places, people, they were building cities. They were into development. They were into agriculture. If they're building all these things, okay, so we got the nursing and all that type of stuff, but what about, you know, sewing for clothes, and what about washing, and what about preparing meals? What about those things? What about cleaning homes? You know, what about that? That was part of everything. Every aspect of servitude was what they were doing. And that's not just in a city. That is literally everywhere. Okay. So take from this, you can see what's going on here. Okay. This is huge. So when we think, and the reason why the Most High wants us to look at this and fully understand it and don't run through it is just to kind of show you that if there was a fire that needed to be built, it was Israel who was building it. If there was wood that needed to be cut, it was Israel. There was a baby that needed to be born, it was Israel. Okay? It was Israel. They were doing all of it. Okay? So they were doing these burdens. They afflicted them with these burdens. Okay? And it was two cities that they mentioned. One right here is called Pithom, and the other one is Ramesses. Okay? I did some research on Pithom. Does anyone know anything about Pithom? Well, let me tell you about it. Pithom is the name, and you can look this up, of Egypt's first god there ever existed for them, their deity, their first god. Okay. And he goes by the name of Atom or Atem. Okay. And he built this place for that god. Okay. And this in particular God is the self-existing God. He called himself into existence. Okay. And he created himself. Okay. So the cities that they were building were for this God. That's who they were working for. Right. And so he had them build that city. And so they multiplied. And it said the more that they multiplied, the more that he afflicted them. They afflicted them even more. Okay. So then he puts out an edict and he tells, hey, listen, I want you, you know, he calls, the king calls those Hebrew midwives, and in verse number 15, and he says, hey, listen, 16, when you attend these women and you see them giving birth, if it's a boy, I need you to kill him. If it's a girl, you're going to let her live. Somebody tell me why.
The seed.
I want to see, yeah.
Yes. So what we're going to destroy is we're going to kill him because he's the seed. We want the girl. Okay. We want her to live. We want him to die. You're going to kill him and let her live. That's been the way that they've been doing things from, and this is their, this is their model. This is their type. This is how they get it done. Why do they want the girls though?
They can impregnate the girl and it'll be their seed.
Yes. And also too, what it is they know that, listen, we don't like the Hebrews. We hate them, but we'll take their women. Okay. We'll take their women. Recently I just found out that the Muslims, okay, I don't know if you guys know this, but the Muslim men, more specifically, are allowed to marry a woman who keeps the Torah. Okay. Muslim men are allowed in their religion to marry a woman who keeps the Torah. But the women are not allowed to marry the men, even if the man keeps the Torah. So we see here basically the same thing. We'll take your women, but we don't want you. And that's what these countries do. They'll take our women because our women are not weak. Our women are strong. They know that. Okay. But of course, they're strong because of their fathers and their genetic makeup, so they want that. And then they're going to, like you said, Dr. Red, they're going to build their nation, and then they'll have more, slave girls and more wives and so forth and so on. So we'll just go ahead and kill the men. And that's been what's been on the table the whole time. So we see that the women, these midwives didn't do that. You guys have read that. They didn't do it. They feared the Most High. They've said they feared Elohim, and they didn't do what he asked them. And then they come and he asked them, well, why haven't you done this? And simply they said, because by the time we get to the women, they already had birth. By the time we get there, they're not like the Egyptian women. When they go into labor, they give birth before we even get there. Okay. So this is something else. Someone leave a comment. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's right. That's right. Let me show you. I think now I'm going to turn it over to, I wanted to show that to you. I'm going to show that to you because that's important. Within your Torah portion this week, what's on the table is reading some of the Psalms as well. And I believe they start in chapter number 80, and I don't know exactly where it goes to. I'm sorry, I'll probably have it for you. Just start in chapter number 80 if you're reading the Psalms, because these Psalms go along with your Torah portion. Okay. So listen what it says. There you go. Just start in verse number 1. All right, this is by this guy called Asaph in the Psalms. Does anyone know who Asaph is?
Is he the high priest at the time?
Well, he's one of the Leviim. Very close. He's one of the Leviim. David appointed the Leviim to sing. So the Leviim in the scriptures are singers. And David, when he said what he wanted them to do was to sing, he didn't like them just walking around and waiting to do their service just to work on the maintenance of the tabernacle. He actually said, you know what? Let's have you guys sing at the tabernacle. So when you hear of different psalms and you get these different Leviim, they have different divisions. So within him, he had sons, and of course, a lot of them are singers, and they would come and they would write songs, and they would gather the people on the Shabbat and different times like that. And this is the reason why they always say, start the music, beat the drum, because they're in charge of that. Okay, so the Lavim had another position as well. They're just not there to collect the tithes and so forth, but they were also there to sing and bring praise to the Most High. The name Asaph has to do with what you would call Yosef. Okay, so you can see the Asaph, Yosef, because this name right here means to gather. Okay, so his name means the gatherer. That's what his name means. Okay, and the reason why he's a gatherer is because his job and his family's job is to gather the people together to come and to hear the songs that are giving praise to the Most High. And so he begins by saying, start the music and beat the drum and play the sweet lyre and the lute. Okay, sound the shofar, which I've been practicing, at Rosh Chodesh and at the full moon. Okay, Rosh Chodesh is the first of the month. Okay, so when's the full moon? Generally, it's usually on the 15th day. Okay, so the beginning of the month, you'll see a sliver, a real thin sliver. That's the first, that's Rosh Chodesh. On the 15th day, in the mid part of the month, you'll see the moon be completely full. And so you can see that the shofar, according to the Most High, is to be blown on these two times, along for the Pilgrim Feast, along with other feasts as well, but more specifically at these times. Okay. So if you have a shofar, you should go out and you should blow it on these two particular times here. Okay. Not that you're a Leviim, but the fact of the matter is you still want to celebrate what Most High has done. This is important to them. Okay. These are actually what you would call, those are called cogs, which a cog is a festival. So you can associate the first of the month and the middle of the month, call a cog. And a cog has to do with the festival or a time of the, you see the cog is a ket, and then it's a gamil. Okay, the ket means a wall, and a wall means what?
Separation.
Yes, yes, separation, right? So we got the separation for the wall, and then we have the gimel. And the gimel means a foot. It means to walk. So that which has been separated is coming together, because that's when people would come together. They would walk, and they would actually, that which was separated from each other during the, the rest of the months or rest of the days or the weeks, then they would come and they would gather. So there's this idea that the Most High has planted in us to understand that his cog or kagim are times for celebration. So when you talk about, and I want you to put this in play right quick, the Rosh Chodesh and the full moon are festivals. Okay. So what I would like for us to start doing is, number one, to acknowledge it. Just acknowledge it. Okay. Acknowledge it. And also, two, I need you to celebrate it. Okay. So what does celebration mean? It means that you eat well, you drink well, and you dance and you sing. Okay. We need to take advantage. Okay. And also, too, you not only get to do it then, but you also get to do it here too. Okay. Which is probably this day after the Shabbat. All right. Why? Verse number 4 tells us, why should you do this? Because it's a coke. The law, but a law is a coke, is a C-H-O-Q. So what's the first two letters in Hebrew? A ket. What's the first two letters of a festival? A ket. Okay. And it has the same idea. This one right here is the sun rising or going down, the sunset. So again, that which is, a gathering of light. So again, it has the idea of gathering. So the Most High has prescribed Rosh Chodesh, full moon, as a feast but also too, it's a coke. It's a time of gathering that which has been separated. Because the Most High literally hates separation. He doesn't like it. Not for us to be separate. He wants us to be separated from everyone else, but from us, from each other, he doesn't want us to be separate from each other. That's why he's always telling us to gather. Tell me, why is he telling his sheep to gather? Oh, I just gave it away. David. David. When the flock is separated, we can't receive the feeding and the instructions. He wants us to be close to one another, because if we stay close to one another, we can fight off threats. You know, when a sheep is by itself, that's when it usually gets attacked. Well, when it's around another group of sheep, the predators are like thinking, like, who can I get? You know what I mean? They usually get the ones that separated, the ones who are by themselves. So the idea of separation is like, you don't want that to happen with the flock. He wants his flock to be together. It's not only a koch in Israel, but it's also a judgment. It's a mishpatim. Okay. And so it's not only a law, what they call a koch here, but it's also a mishpatim. It's a ruling. Okay. It's how the Most High sees things for us. Okay. He placed it as a testimony in Yosef. So you ask yourself a question, well, what do you mean by he said it as a testimony in Yosef? When did he set it as a testimony in Yosef? Why is he mentioning him? Was he really saying? This right here, a testimony, is called an aduth. Okay? Aduth means that when he says he said it as a testimony, that means somebody heard something. So when did they hear it, and when in Yosef did they hear it? Is he talking about some other, tribe only, or what is he saying? What he's saying is, when he says that he placed it as a testimony in Yosef, he's mentioning Yosef because Yosef was the what? He was the first one to go into Mizraim. He's the first one that arrived there. He says when he went out against the land of Mizraim, because the Most High is making us remember. Listen what he says, just to let you know. When the Most High, when it says he went out against the land of Mizraim, he delivered his first message about killing the firstborn to Moshe on the first of that month. He says, today is the first day of the month. He said, you shall mark this as your first of the months. Remember he told him that? You guys remember that? Here, let me show it to you so we can make sense of it. I got a couple of minutes. I don't want to mess up, but let me get it here for you. Okay. That's why he says in Yosef, because Yosef was the first one to go, but listen what he says. Chapter number 12 of Exodus, he says this, Yahweh spoke to Moshe and Aharon in the land of Mizraim. He said, you are to begin your calendar with this month. This month. It will be the first of the month for you. Okay? For you. And he ain't just talking to Moshe and Aharon. Those are the shepherds and the leaders that he chose. He said, speak to all the assembly of Israel. Okay? So he says, you are to begin this month. It will be the first. So that was the first day of that month, which we would call Aviv. Okay? He says, on the 10th day of this month, each man is to take a lamb or a kid for his family, one per household. Okay? So if he told him that on the first day and he shows up on the 10th day, what did he do on the 10th day? What did he do to the Egyptians on that night? He killed the firstborn. Okay? So he's telling us, listen carefully. He's telling you, I need you to always sound that shofar on this day. That's the first of the month. just to commemorate it, and on the full moon, which is the 15th. So guess what he did? He says, I'm mistaken. On the 10th, he didn't kill him. He said on the 10th, you go grab the lamb. But on the 14th day, that's when Yah did what he did. Okay. So you got the first day, you got the 10th day, you got the 14th day, and the 15th. The 15th is the full moon. On the full moon, what happened? What were they doing?
Having a celebration festival.
They were leaving. Yes. They were leaving Mizraim. They were walking clean out of there. And they had no leaven with them. They had matzah. So now do you see why he wants us to remember this? He's always trying to keep this in front of us. He's not trying to get you and I to remember Rosh Chodesh just because it's the first of the month. He's not trying to get us to remember the 15th because it's just the 15th of the month. These days are associated with times in which were very important for our family. And listen, praise be to the living Elohim. I want you to celebrate that. I want you to remember that I came to Moshe and Aharon on the first day. And I told him on the 10th day, I need you to take a lamb or a kid. And on the 14th day, I'm killing the firstborn of Egypt. And on the 15th day, you walked out of there, which is on the full moon. So I need you to go get a shofar, and I need you to sound that. I need you to celebrate that. So every day or every 1st and 15th, you and I should commemorate it because it's a Koch. Koch means, of course, it's a gathering. The Most High is letting you know, I'm your Elohim. So why would he want to tell us this? Because you're saying that's what you did for me. You're saying that Yah is your Elohim. See, if you don't say that, then it's very possible that you serve another God, because you would be thinking about Christ and the New Testament and the Christian, research center and the different Christian things that you're going to go on, or different religions. They don't talk about this. This is the reason why the Most High wants us to talk about it, so you and I can remember. Okay. So he placed his testimony in Yosef. Why? Because that's when he went against Mizraim. He's already told us. He said, I heard an unfamiliar voice say. Asaph is telling people, I need you to play that music, because guess what? I heard a voice say. What did I tell you about these quotation marks?
It's y'all speaking.
That's Yahweh speaking. Guess what Yahweh says? I lifted the load from his shoulder. Whose shoulder? Whose shoulder did Yahweh lift from his shoulder? Whose shoulder? He lifted it from Yaakov's. Yeah. I lifted it from Yaakov. That's what I've done. Because he talks to us about us being Yaakov, and he also talks about us being in Yisrael. Yaakov is the one who is in trouble. That's the one in sorrow. That's the one who's being mistreated. That's the one who's being exploited. When he talks about Yisrael, that's the one who succeeds, and who has succeeded. Okay? Don't forget that. So Yah said, here's an unfamiliar voice. I lifted the load from his shoulder. His hands were freed from the laborer's basket. So remember, I told you about the baskets for the water, the baskets for the food, the baskets for the rocks, the baskets for everything. Israel was working nonstop without a Shabbat. You got it? Verse 7. You called out when you were what? In trouble. That's when you called out to me, when you're in trouble. And what? I rescued you. I saved you. I delivered you from this. I freed you from this. I took that load that was on your shoulders. I answered you from the thundercloud, and I tested you at the Meribah spring, saying, Selah. Then he tells us this, and we'll end with this. Hear my people, while I'll give you warning. Yisrael, if you would only listen to me, There is not to be with you any foreign god. You are not to worship an alien god. I am Yahweh your Elohim, who brought you up from the land of Mizraim. Open your mouth and I will fill it. He's saying this because he just told us in context that all the baskets and everything were in where you need to be free from, and where I rescued you from was Mizraim. And I'm the only Elohim that you know. That's why I told you no foreign God. See, if you mention the name of another God, or you mention another savior, or you mention another method or another idea, you're negating this. And this is where the Most High says that I brought you up out from this. And everything that we listed tonight is very similar, if not the same, as what happened in Mizraim. That's why I got to get you to remember Mizraim, because it would kind of raise some eyebrows. Like, wait a minute. They were working in the field. They were working in the house. They were midwives. They were nursing other people's children. They were raising kids. They were raising crops. They were doing everything. I want you to remember that. That's why this story is so important, because I am Yahweh. I'm the one who brought you out. I'm the one who caused you to come out from this bondage. I need you to do that. If you do that, you open your mouth, I would fill it. That's what I told you. But listen what he says. But my people, they didn't listen to my voice. Okay, so let's ask a question. Why is he asking us to, or giving the command? I'm sorry, he's not asking, he's giving a command. This is a command. So this is way after they've been in Mizraim. This is way after, this is hundreds of years later, literally probably 1,000 years later. Why is he mentioning this? It's because he's drawing your attention to who he is and what he did for you, and where you came out of, and what he plans on doing for us again. But he says, my people would not listen to my voice. Okay. They wouldn't. Israel would not have none of me. They would not have none of me. I wrote a note in here that talked about not have none of me. That note right there about none of me in Hebrew means that they were not willing. Okay. And willingness has to do with the idea of what we would call a box. I don't probably have enough time, but a box. And in a box, what you try to do, forgive my ugly box, but in a box is empty. And what you want to do is you want to fill that box. Okay. You have a need and you want to fill it. You need to fill it with something because it's empty. So the Most High is saying that they didn't have a willingness to say, well, this is empty and let me put something inside of it. They didn't want to do that. They're not willing to fill the void, because that's what a box is. A box is just a box until you put something in it. It's void. Okay. So they're not willing to listen to me. Okay. So what I did was, so I gave them over to their stubbornness, or their stubborn hearts, meaning their minds. I'll let their minds remain stubborn and hard and stiff. And they're going to live by their own plans, which of course is not just their plans, but their counsel. Okay. And I'll start right there. But Yah goes into more detail about, his people not taking that counsel, but they're taking their own counsel here. Okay. And then of course, let me just say 13, he says, oh, how I wish, meaning like, oh, if they would only, my people would only listen to me, and that Israel will live by my ways. Okay. Then he says, I will quickly subdue their enemies and turn my hand against their foes. Because those who hate Yahweh will cringe before him, while Israel's time will last forever. So the reason why there's probably been a delay in our being restored back to our place with the Most High is simply because of this one thing. His people are refusing. They're not willing to fill the void. They're not willing to listen to him. That's the theme, that they'll cry. They'll cry to him, but they won't listen. And that's what he's trying to tell us. Okay. But again, I am Yahweh, your Elohim. I'm personal. Okay. That your right there means possessive. Okay. And I don't want you to call on nobody else, because this other God that you guys are serving has never done this for you. I'm the one who done this. If you take this out of the story and you get rid of this and you replace it with something else, then that's a whole nother God. You can't get rid of this piece. This is the piece. And he also talks about, I did it alone. So does anyone have any questions about that? Because that's a huge piece for us, that he tells us that we should live. You need to listen to me, right? Because I'm the one who's took that burden off your shoulder. I'm the one who did that. And that's why I'm asking you to remember my days. I'm asking you to remember my kukim. I'm asking you to remember these things, because if you remember them, then you'll be like, oh, that's our only Elohim. Okay. That was in Psalms 81. Yes, Koti Pam.
Yeah, thank you. I found it.
Yeah. So you see the connection? There's a connection. Yeah. So his people wouldn't listen to him. So he tells us the end from the beginning. So that's what we have to understand. And moving forward, the rest of this week, coming on Yom Kamishi, we will continue to talk about some of the things that have happened. So I think we stopped where we talked about Pharaoh talking to the midwives. But yeah, they're trying to destroy the seed. And the reason why we're still alive today is because of the Most High. Because they want to wipe us out. That's been the goal. And why? Why get rid of the seed? That's what I want you guys to think about until we meet again, if the Most High is willing. Any contributions? If not, I say, Lila Tov.
Lolita.
I'm a tone.
See you all. Shalom.